Hello everyone and welcome back to our channel. Today's topic is going to be very interesting. Today we'll be taking a look at the life of a well-known serial killer, which due to some gruesome reason became an internet sensation. Yes, today we'll be talking about Jeffrey Dahmer's life. But before we get started, you need to get comfortable, because this video might get icky. The early days. Before their first anniversary, on May 21st, 1960, Jeffrey Dahmer, Joyce and Lionel Dahmer's first child, was born in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. It was a very joyful time. It was like everything was brand new and very enjoyable, and happy when Jeff was first born. Jeff grew into a bright and loving child who was very exuberant and liked to wrestle, run around and ham it up for the camera. He also liked to play with kids and was very outgoing. Jeff's father pursued his chemistry degree. After completing his education and earning a PhD in chemistry, Lionel moved his family to Ohio, where they moved 3 times before settling on a nearly 2-acre forested site an hour south of Cleveland. It was at this time that Lionel started to observe the once outgoing kid Jeff had become distant and reserved. He appeared to be uncomfortable in social situations and didn't feel comfortable. The Dahmers thought their son needed to feel more involved, so they let Jeff choose the name of their second son. Jeff named his brother David. At the age of 7, Jeff was given a dog named Frisky, which he adored. When he was around people he knew or his new pet, the boy who lived next door, he was very relaxed, but there was this shyness and inferiority complex that they were concerned about at the time. Lionel encouraged his son to engage in activities that would allow him to interact with other children. They tried to involve Jeff in those activities, with the hope that involvement would lead to human involvement, a forced almost interaction. On the weekends, father and son worked in gardens and raised sheep for competition in forage fairs. When Jeff was 10, his mother was admitted to the hospital and treated for anxiety. As a result of his parents' married life started facing a crisis. Jeff's interest in nature and small creatures persisted into his adolescent years, when he developed an interest in how they appeared on the inside and began collecting roadkill while riding and carrying large waste bags. Jeff looked for carcasses. In the privacy of the woods in the backyard of the home, Jeff examined the creatures he'd collected as roadkill. What he was doing was examining the insides of animals, and I'm now finally persuaded that this was the beginning of his downhill spiral, and that it was brought on by puberty, when hormones began to play a role in this awful concoction. His sexuality was blossoming at the same time. Teenage Jeff was starting to realize that he was only attracted to men sexually, but his thoughts of sex with men started to mix with his fantasies of killing another man and dismembering him. These fantasies excited him, but they were unspeakable. Something went wrong when he was 14 or 15, and he started having obsessive thoughts of violence mixed with sex. And it only got worse from there. Because he didn't know how to tell anyone about it, he just kept it all inside. How everything started going downhill. For the first time, Jeff's fantasies crossed the line from his imagination into reality. He planned he would knock out a nearby jogger with a bat and would lie down next to him on the day he chose to wait for his victim. The jogger didn't run by, and he never attempted doing this a second time. Dahmer states that his compulsions towards necrophilia and murder began around the age of 14. However, it seems that the dissolution of his parents' marriage and their contentious divorce a few years later may have been the spark for converting these ideas into deeds. Jeff's sexual fantasies traumatized him as he entered high school, and in order to get away from them, he started drinking on the way to classes in the morning. He would fill up a cup with hard liquor at a friend's house and would get drunk. When did the killing start? Dahmer's alcohol habit had run amok by the time of his first murder. Just a few months after graduating from high school, in June 1978, Dahmer killed his first victim when he picked up Stephen Hicks, a hitchhiker, and drove him to his parents' house. Then, after getting Hicks intoxicated, Dahmer murdered him by hitting him in the head with a barbell and strangled him as he tried to leave. The body parts of Dahmer's first victim were dissected, placed in plastic bags and buried near his parents' house. Later, he unearthed the corpse, used a sledgehammer to break up the bones, and dispersed them throughout a forested valley. His freshly remarried father suggested that he join the army, so he dropped out of Ohio State University after just 1 quarter. Later, in December 1978, Dahmer enrolled, and shortly after, he was assigned to Germany. His drinking issue remained, and the army dismissed him at the beginning of 1981. Although German officials later looked into possible connections between Dahmer and murders that happened nearby at the time, it is not thought that he committed any more killings while he was a member of the military. Dahmer went back to his Ohio home after receiving his discharge. Dahmer's father sent him to live with his grandmother in Wisconsin, when he was jailed later that year for disorderly behavior. But his drinking problem persisted, and he was arrested for indecent exposure the following summer. When two youngsters accused him of masturbating in front of them in 1986, he was jailed once again. He was sentenced to a year of probation. Dahmer didn't murder Stephen Tuomi, his second victim, until September 1987. After checking into a hotel room and having a few drinks, Dahmer ultimately woke up to discover Tuomi dead and without any memory of what had happened the night before. To get Tuomi's body to his grandmother's basement, he purchased a big suitcase. There, he dissected Tuomi's body and masturbated on it before discarding the pieces. Even though she was unaware of his other activities, Dahmer's grandma didn't get tired of her grandson's late evenings and drinking until he killed 2 more people there in 1988, at which point she had him leave the property. In the 2 years that followed, Dahmer's victim count quickly increased from 4 to 17. As he advanced, he established rituals, experimenting with chemical methods of disposal, and frequently eating the flesh of his victims. Additionally, Dahmer tried rudimentary lobotomies by drilling muriatic acid injections into the victim's skull while they were still alive. After being apprehended on July 22, 1991, Dahmer's murdering rampage came to a halt. Inextricably linked to Dahmer's infamous killing spree were the body parts discovered in his refrigerator and the Polaroid pictures of his victims. 2 Milwaukee police officers were directed to Dahmer when they picked up Tracy Edwards, an African-American man of 32, who was walking the streets with handcuffs dangling from his wrists. They made the decision to look into the man's accusations that he'd been drugged and restrained by a weird guy. When they got to Dahmer's residence, he politely volunteered to grab the handcuffs keys. The knife that Dahmer allegedly threatened Edwards with was apparently in the bedroom. Polaroid pictures of severed bodies were laying around as the officer entered to verify the story. Dahmer was overpowered by the cops. Dahmer initially entered a no guilty plea to all counts, despite having admitted to the murders while being questioned by police. In the end, he decided to plead guilty due to insanity. The horrifying details of his actions were subsequently used in his defense as evidence that only a madman could have committed such heinous deeds. The prosecutors claimed that Dahmer was fully aware of the evilness of his deeds, yet nevertheless decided to carry them out, was accepted by the jury. After deliberating for almost 10 hours, they came back on February 15, 1992, and found him guilty but sane on all charges. He was given a 15 life sentence, with the option of an additional 16 life sentence added in May. Dahmer apparently adapted well to prison life despite being originally segregated from the rest of the inmates. He ultimately persuaded the guards to let him interact with the other prisoners more. He discovered Christianity through literature and pictures that his father had forwarded to him, and the Columbia Correctional Institution gave him permission to be baptized by a local preacher. On November 28, 1994, his fellow prisoner, Christopher Scarver, murdered Death Dahmer. Dahmer was put to work by Jesse Anderson and Scarver, 2 other convicted killers, as part of his involvement in regular work tasks. When the guards came back, they discovered Scarver had violently beaten both men with a metal bar after they were left alone to finish their jobs. After almost an hour, Dahmer was declared dead. In 2015, Scarver discussed his motives for murdering Dahmer in an interview with the New York Post. Scarver claimed that in addition to being troubled by Dahmer's atrocities, he was also bothered by his practice of creating severed limbs out of prison food in an effort to provoke other prisoners. Scarver said that after being made fun of by Dahmer and Anderson while on duty, he questioned Dahmer about his misdeeds before killing the 2 men. So guys, this is it for today's video. I hope you liked the video. Let us know in the comments section your thoughts on whether he was actually a sane person or not. And also, what would you like to see in the next video? Take care, and we'll be back soon with another video.